Now I'm very excited to welcome back an amazing sports bettor and great friend of the show, and Mr. Will Hill from Bear Bets VSiN, as well as the Gold Boys Discord. You can follow Will on Twitter at not the Will Hill. Will, thanks for coming back on the show. It's late winter. Yeah, I've been keeping track of some of the weather. It's been like going up to like 60s, 70s, and down to 20. I don't know. It's at least in the Midwest. How's it over there in Connecticut?
It's okay. We've had some flashes of spring, and you mentioned the date. We can very quickly here do something that's very important, and that is turn the calendar to March. Because once you turn the calendar to March, everything just feels better. It sounds better. I don't know how you feel. I'm doing a lot of content, man. Everything pushed back is killing me. The fact that the selection's not till St. Patrick's Day. Usually we're like in the first or second round by St. Patrick's Day in past tournaments. Now we're not going to get that first Thursday and Friday of the tournament until like the 20th, 21st. These smaller conference tournaments usually start like late February, and by March 1st, 2nd, 3rd, we have some title games. Those don't start till like March 6th or 7th. So everything is pushed back. It's throwing me off a little bit, but look, wasn't that long ago we were sitting here this time of year during a pandemic and everything got shut down and we didn't have any games. So I guess I shouldn't complain, but definitely notice it this time of the year with everything being pushed back, because the time between the Super Bowl and March Madness is so diminished now with the extra week of football, with the week 18, that it feels like it just boom, Super Bowl to conference tournaments. But this year it does feel a little longer with everything just dragged out a little bit.
Yeah, it does, man. Well, February 29th, that's today. We got a extra day they threw in. So they're delaying March, right? It almost feels like it a little bit.
Tell them to
February.
keep their extra day of February. We don't need more February. We need more March.
That's right. Like make July like 40 days.
Yes.
Yeah, that'll fix it, right? Well, daylight saving time's coming up too, so that's always a challenge when it comes to the nation. But man, yeah, you're right. It's pushback. I'm okay with the pushback because I just want more days of college basketball. It just feels like I'm getting more days, so I'm okay with that. I wish that the Super Bowl wasn't pushed up so much, and we discussed that a little bit, but here we are. And there's massive games this weekend. What's interesting is that some of the small conference tournaments should start next week, which is, you're right, it usually starts end of February, but now it's going to start next week. I think that's going to be interesting. I dive into those a little bit. The big conference tournament's definitely the week after, and that's going to be possibly dictating where some of these bubble teams go. But before we get into college basketball, which is our main focus, there's a lot of stuff going on. We got NFL, the draft, Major League Baseball. I want to just touch on those things. Do you have any draft thoughts right now? I'm a Bear fan. I'm going to focus on the Bears a little bit, but do you think there's any chance that it's not Caleb Williams at number one? I think two things can happen. I think Caleb Williams is number one, but what are your thoughts on the first couple picks?
I think the draft starts at 2. I think it's becoming more clear that if you read some of the comments by the Bears, that, hey, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when they trade Fields, and, hey, we want to do right by him, get him right situation, do all those sorts of things. If you just read between the lines, they are going to take a quarterback. I would imagine it's Caleb Williams. I can't bet the draft in Connecticut. I'm almost glad I can't, because I might be tempted to lay the minus 900 and just, hey, put that away somewhere and just take my free whatever $100, risk 900, risk $9 to win $1 and move on, because I do think there's very little chance it's not Caleb Williams. And then the draft starts at 2. The question for me is, obviously it's Daniels or May at 2. The question for me is at 3, does New England, if they don't like what they see at 2, like if their guy goes at 2, let's just say, hey, we really like May or we really like Daniels, we don't like the other one. Do they trade up to 2? And when you're doing these mock drafts or content, it's hard to project trades up. But if let's just say Washington really likes a guy at 2, they stand pat, they take him. Does New England sit there at 3 and say, hey, our guy's not there, we're not going to take a quarterback just to take a quarterback, we're going to trade out? And that opens up some extra things to, I don't know, some of these teams on the fringes, like Minnesota, Denver, the Raiders, some of these guys, the Falcons, some of these guys that need a quarterback. And Cousins can't play for all these teams, and Cousins is going to be a hot commodity here. Does that open up a trade possibility? So to me, it's going to be Caleb Williams, then a quarterback at 2 for Washington, then at 3 is where it gets interesting. So I don't know if you agree or disagree with any of that.
No, I agree. I totally agree. For a while, I thought that there might be a chance taking the field instead of Caleb Williams, but I'm sure I'm wrong about that. But here's what I'm also going to say. I think it's going to be a lot of BS being thrown at the Bears and us. And here's why. Right now, Washington, and they're already starting to do this. They're looking at guys like Drake May and Daniels, and they're going to act like they're really in love with them, just to get a better value to try to trade with the Bears, because Clint Kingsbury's there for a reason. And he was spent our time with Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams last year. It's almost like, seriously, dude, are you going to try to act like you don't want this? But no, the Bears aren't going to bite for it. Now, I'm not saying the Bears won't trade it, though. As a Bears fan, they have struck out so many freaking times thinking they're smarter than everybody else, but it just proves that they were on the opposite side of that. It's always been frustrating. You can see the Shea McClellan draft pick, that obviously Trubisky, we don't have to get into anymore. I think they finally actually had a good draft last year, but Caleb Williams, to me, would have been drafted first last year and probably this year. I'm okay with it. I think he's got some issues that any young kid could have issues. I think, living in LA, he's done some funky things, but you know what? The kid's got a sidearm throw. He looks great. I think he's the best pick of the draft. And so I'd be okay with the Bears picking him at first, but I think that what they're going to do is trade to Washington, get a haul, and they'll just pick Jaden Daniels. And I like that. I don't hate it. I don't know what to think about Daniels, because, he was bad when he didn't have good coaches with ASU, then had an amazing year last year, but he looks like a Lamar Jackson. He makes some really good throws, possibly even more accurate. And the NFL has just moved more and more towards quarterbacks with legs. It has. Now, if you get a haul, is the risk difference enough to justify going from a possible Hall of Fame guy to Jaden Daniels? Well, here's the problem with the Bears. If Caleb Williams turns out to be the man, it's just going to make them look bad again.
Horrible.
People be like, the two best quarterbacks, Mahomes and Caleb Williams, the Bears passed up on him. And it's almost like, is that worth the risk? I mean, to me, it is, because for all we know, Daniels could end up better than Williams, but I'm okay with either situation right now. Unfortunately, they have to get rid of Fields. And the truth is, the Bears organization is so bad, Fields might even be better than both of these guys. I honestly don't know if Fields is not. When quarterbacks are in a bad organization and poorly coached and all the changes that he went through, there's a chance that he could be very good still. But the problem is, you can't take the risk, because if they keep him, don't grab Caleb or whatever, Fields automatically holds out for a ton of money, because it is just so embarrassing for the Bears. It's just a situation you have to be rid of. But I would rather have a Jaden Daniels where you have much less money to pay him, and a rookie contract where you can build everybody up and build around that, rather than a Justin Fields where you still don't know. So I think that makes sense. And I do think you're right that we should lay 900 to win 100 on this bet too.
Yep. Boy, I'd have a hard time. And you're closer to this. You're following it more than I have a hard time seeing them trade out of the pick, because if you draft Caleb Williams and it doesn't work out, you know what? You'll be disappointed, but nobody can say, oh my God, how could you draft the kid? He was the consensus number one. If you get cute here and you trade down and you take Daniels, and Caleb Williams, like you said, goes on to be a star, Hall of Famer, top 8, top 5 quarterback, it's just been, oh my God, the Bears did it again. They outthunk themselves. So I don't know. You might be right, but again, I do think it's Caleb 1. I do think the Bears keep the pick, and then we'll start to see what happens here at 2 or 3.
Do they get the 2 back? Because they had Montez Sweat trade that too. They have number 1, number 9. I'm okay with getting a 2 for Fields if that's happening. I don't see why it wouldn't happen if teams really like him. I think I'm hoping there's a bidding war. A lot of people throwing out Atlanta. I've heard New England. I've heard a few things. Doesn't seem like New England's style to do that myself, but maybe they change after Belichick. But do you think they can get a 2 for a quarterback that's going to have to be paid like him?
Yeah, I think 2's in the ballpark. Maybe like a 3 and a 5, a 2 and a 6, maybe 2 and something. Yeah, but I think you're in the ballpark, and you hit on it where. Ideally, you have 2 teams trying to bid for him, and that jacks up the price. But I think you're in the ballpark. I don't think they're getting a 1, but a 2's a nice pick. 2's really valuable, because you don't have to pay that second round pick a lot. You get that extra year of control, I believe. So those second rounders are very valuable.
All right. Well, let's pivot on to Major League Baseball. And obviously, spring training is happening. I'm heading out to the Cubs game with my son and my daughter right after this because they have half days at school, parent teacher conferences. Thank God my wife can handle that and I can go to the game and just get there at about right when it starts. So it's kind of perfect. But I'm excited for that. Bellinger was just signed. I personally think that Boris got fleeced a little bit for what he usually wants. He says the market's bad for it. And I mean, the market proved itself. I mean, if you look at these top contracts, there's some really bad ones out there, man. And I think teams are just like, you know what? We're finally realizing that the risk is too much. And they sat out and they caved. Now, don't get me wrong, $30 million this year and opt-out potentials is great for Bellinger too. I think it's not like they got completely fleeced, but I'm pretty happy with the contract. So maybe mention that and any Major League Baseball season win totals that you played.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, we got a 2-time Cy Young winner in Blake Snell who's still not signed. I mean, we're not that far away from the season. Matt Chapman.
Yankees, man. The Yankees might sign him.
Yeah, I'm not buying that. I think that's Boris, and I believe that's another Boris guy. I think that's Boris using the Yankees as leverage. If I had to guess, I think ultimately he ends up with the Giants because that's a team they've been looking to burn money. They just missed out on Carlos Correa. They were in the mix for Judge. They who else? Oh, Otani. They tried to pull the trigger on. So and they're not in the same conversation with the Dodgers right now. So they need a splash. They need an upgrade. And with the current landscape of baseball, if you could just get in the playoffs, anything can happen. If you start a short series with Logan Webb and Blake Snell, that's a pretty good duo. So I ultimately think he ends up with the Giants. The Yankees is just not their MO to spend that kind of money. But Cubs are going to have a chance here to win a really, that's a bad division. The Centrals, it just seems like they're year in, year out. Those are the two weak, the weak divisions, the weak sisters, both Centrals, the AL and the NL. What a collapse that was last year for the Cubs with a chance to get in the playoffs. And
yeah,
the Diamondbacks take their spot, and the Diamondbacks go all the way to the World Series. Cubs were dropping fly balls late in the season. I mean, they lost games all different sorts of ways to blow that playoff opportunity. But I did play a couple win totals. Yeah, I did play a couple win totals. I think the Rockies are in for a very long season. 59.5, 60.5. I played under. I think there's still a 60.5 out there. To me, this team's going to lose 105, 110 games. When you're playing something that low, there's not that much wiggle room. But if you look at the pitching, they have no pitching. And that's a bad ballpark in a bad division to have no pitching in. They're going to have to play the Dodgers 14 times, who are just going to be a machine. The Diamondbacks 14 times, who just went to the World Series. Giants still a pretty good team. The Padres are due for some positive regression with their poor luck in extra inning games. Last year, they went 1-12 in extra innings, which is just hard to believe. So to me, the Rockies under is a play. And I did play under.
Too. Is it 60 right now?
Yeah, I'm 60.5, 59.5, of course, shop around.
Okay.
Played a couple other unders. I played the Mets under. I just don't think they have a lot of pitching. Their one good starting pitcher is Senga, and he's hurt. He's not going to pitch opening day. Who knows when he'll be back? He's had a history of missing time back in Japan, and that's a lot of fourth and fifth starters they're trying to piece together with Jose Quintana and Joey Lucchesi and Adrian Hauser. There's not a lot of pitching, and that's a Division II where they play the Braves and Phillies that combined 28 times. The Marlins made the playoffs last year. The Nationals are up and coming, and they're going to be improving at some point with all the stuff they got for Juan Soto and Scherzer. So I did play Mets under wins as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Their win total went from the high 90s or something last year to like 81, and you still like them under. Wow, that is. Yeah, I mean, it's a big step, but they also were bad last year, and wow, a lot of bad contracts on there as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna go the Homer way, but I think I make some sense in here. I took over 83.5 for the Cubs, and I think you kind of mentioned they underachieved and they blew it at the end, but it was a lot of one-score games at the end. And their pie tag is what, like in the 90s?
Yep.
You know, I mean, they should have won like at least 90 some games. But then you look at the changes here. They got Bellinger back now. They got everybody back that they need. You know, I think that Swanson's going to have a great year. Nico Horner's going to have a great year. They still have the guys, but they should be better this year because, I mean, their pitching should be better. Tyone had a horrible first 2/3 of the year, or at least first half of the year, and he's gotten better. Justin Steele's still there. Imanaga is a question, but he's supposed to be in the starting rotation. Wicks had a great start, I thought, as a guy coming out of the farm system. And you have to think that the Cubs pitching should be better. I still think they're going to be an over team. I still think there's going to be a lot of runs scored with the Cubs, but how do you not upgrade your manager and still be 83.5 and you're favored to win the division? I mean, how bad is the Central? If the favorite is only a win total of 83.5, I'm starting to look and I see a lot of 84.5s right now. I just bet this yesterday. But dude, it blows my mind that the team that's favored to win has only 83.5 wins. And I will tell you this, David Ross, I was not a fan of him. I watched him blow games with some of his bad decisions. And now he got the guy from the Brewers who's been overachieving there. Let's hope he can kind of put something together here. And the Cubs, I think, should get up to the high 80s in their wins, personally.
Plus, the Brewers are weakened now. No Burns, no Woodruff, who they did re-sign, but I believe he's out for the year. So that's one big rival that's diminished. So that's 14 games against them that are not as tough. They're not going to be as good. They've got Peralta, but they don't have the kind of team they've had in past years. They're going through a little bit of a mini rebuild. So yeah, I agree. The Reds are an interesting team to watch if they can keep their pitchers healthy. The Hunter Greens, the Lodolos, the Ashcraft. They've got, De La Cruz looks like he's destined to be a big time player. And boy, that's just some of these teams in the division, they are bad and they stay bad for a while. Like, when's the last time the Pirates were good? The Reds, I mean, it's such a depressing division. So I think you're on the right track there with the Cubs for all the reasons you mentioned.
Thank you. The Cardinals were terrible last year, and the Reds are the only really competition, and they were interesting last year. That's why I'm not making the division bet just yet. I'm going to dive into the Reds a little bit more in the Cubs.
Do you have a Reds division bet, division odds in front of you? I could pull it up if not.
I can pull it up too. I think the Cubs were plus 180.
It's not a bad number at all.
No, it's not. It's not. To make the playoffs. Well, dude, I had plus money on them making the playoffs last year, and imagine how bad of a beat that was when I took that.
Horrible.
It's minus 120 and your win total is at 83.5, 84.5. That's an automatic over for me. And also, man, I got to tell you this, there's just a lot of hype on this Cubs team right now. And I feel like their farm system was kind of developed. I think this is the year that, as long as Bellinger doesn't regress really bad and some of the other guys, we should be okay. Division odds, I just pulled up National League Cubs plus 180. Reds is plus 340.
Not bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's not bad. You're playing against the Brewers, the Cardinals, and the Pirates. If you want to bet both of those, yeah, I wouldn't say that that'd be a terrible bet. I really like your Rockies play. It's so funny. That's a low total, but sometimes the low ones are where it's at. Are they going to be the Athletics of last year? You can't get a ball wet enough to adjust for that ballpark. It's almost like the humidity in the ball they'd have to put, it'll be drenching when they're pitching.
Right.
The ball be sweating, water coming out. You can't do that. It's just such a bad ballpark. And I think a lot of big hitters really take advantage. So the pitching's terrible in the Rockies. I like that one you took. I think I might be playing that today myself.
Another one people will like, if you can parlay some of these division winners. Again, people are going to sit here and say, hey, it's February. I don't want to tie up my money until the first few days of October, which I understand. There's definitely an element of that to it. But Dodgers to win the division, you parlay that with the Braves to win the division, you get that sucker down to minus 137. The Dodgers are minus 450. I don't see any scenario they don't win the division. They can't have enough injuries to not win that division. Yeah. And then the Braves are minus 240. Well, I still think they're like Phillies are a good team. The Phillies have given them a hard time, obviously, in the playoffs, but the Braves are still a good 10 games, probably better than the Phillies in the regular season. So again, you bring that down to minus 137. I don't think that's a bad bet at all.
All right, good stuff. Bring that down to minus 137. Let's move to some college basketball then. And you know what we like to do, baby? Buy low, sell high. I've been told that I like to steal my guests, buy low, sell high. So I'm going to have you go first and see if we line up. And maybe you pick one of mine. Well, let's start with buy low.
I don't know if it's buying low, but I am in on St. John's. I feel like that whole rant with Patino, the narrative was, hey, the players are going to quit on him. You can't talk about your players like that. You can't talk to your players like that. Anyone who's played sports has heard a lot worse than, hey, you're slow, you can't defend. I like this team. They offensive rebound. They get to the hoop. Patino's a good coach, a good tournament coach. I was texting you about it a few days ago because I can't bet odds to make the tournament in Connecticut. I know there was a plus price on them at some of the books out there. To me, they're at, I believe, 17 wins. They finished with DePaul and Georgetown. That would get them to 19. Obviously, you're not going to get much for, those aren't quad wins. Those aren't wins that are going to help your strength of victory. But that puts you at 19 wins, and you get the Big East tournament in your building. So if you can win one or two, that puts you at 20, 21 wins, a 21-win Big East St. John's team from New York. You got the New York market. That's appealing for TV. Patino's a draw. That's appealing for TV. They would love to put them in one of those first 4 games, those Dayton games that Tuesday or Wednesday for the market, the draw. That's just that they're really, really good for ratings. If you see anything plus money on St. John's to make the tournament, I think that's a good bet. That was a dominant performance in Butler. A good win against Creighton on Sunday. So I don't know if this qualifies as buy low, but I still think it's a good opportunity to buy on St. John's. I got a good feeling they're going to make the tournament.
Oh, I love it, man. Money talks, BS walks, right? I mean, seriously,
Yes.
that's going to bring in ratings, and that's the way they're going to go. I think it's a great bet. So good stuff on there. Yeah, St. John's is in, and I kind of wish Patino yelled at his team when I was betting them about 2-3 weeks ago. Kind of would have worked out for me a little bit better with that team, but right now I can't go against them. That's for sure. They're playing motivated and they're playing better. Something woke up in them. So we'll see if that lasts. I'll go with LSU for a buy low team. I know. It took them all year to figure a few things out, but they're above 500, and I'm not sure if it is in their minds or what that they can make the bubble, but the truth is 15-13, you have a win against Kentucky, number 17 on KenPom, Kentucky. You have a win against number 22 on KenPom, Wake Forest. I don't know if those are look at quadrant 1 or at least Kentucky's quadrant 1. Texas A&M is kind of faltering, but you have a win against them. South Carolina has been doing much better, and you have a win against them. I mean, their schedule is really easy. Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and Missouri here. I know 2 are away, but that just means you're going to get more value on LSU. So I'm kind of looking at LSU a little bit. I think in their minds, they can play to the bubble and maybe be in a play-in game, whether that's true or not. So I'm going to look at LSU a little bit. Another buy low team that I have, believe it or not, Wisconsin. They've been terrible in February and terrible through the Big Ten, yet they can still get 2 very big wins here against Illinois at home. They have Purdue at the end of the stick. It's at Purdue, but they're going to put on a full effort for that. Purdue might not have to play for anything special minus it being senior night, because Purdue's already going to be locked in to win the regular season, thinking about the Big Ten tournament, right? That's what very much could happen. It's not like losing. It's hard to predict motivation, but when a team's in, it's not something I want to be on the side of, because you could see some letdown there and some relaxation there. So I think Wisconsin gets it maybe this week, and I might be hinting that I'm going to discuss that game against Illinois. Let's move to sell high. Give me 1 or 2 teams trending down or that are overrated that might have some fade value coming up.
I hate this Virginia team. I can't stand watching them. I think I think President Biden should step in and just rule them out of the tournament and just do us all a favor. Nobody needs to watch this team. I think they're inflated, and this does lead into one of my games. I just think they're overvalued. I think they're 8-0 in games decided by 4 points or less, so their record's puffed up. They can't shoot. They can't shoot free throws. They are painful to watch. They are right on the bubble. I hope we don't have to watch them come March. Maybe I do want them in so I can fade them. But to me, I know they're a good coach and they won a title a few years ago. I can't stand watching this team. I think they have major flaws, major red flags. I'm going to be looking to fade them this week, and I don't like this Virginia team.
No, I don't. You're right. They were one of my fade teams a couple weeks ago. I think their defense started showing up, and then I was like, well, maybe I can start buying low, but nope, I was wrong on that. Yeah, I agree. This team can't shoot. It seems like the ACC, and contrary to what their own commentators saying, that it's one of the best divisions. I was watching the Wake Forest Notre Dame game and said, and Wake Forest was clearly going to lose. And like, well, the ACC is one of the best division conferences in college basketball. I'm like, shut up. Nobody thinks that. It's like, what are you trying to sell us right
It's not 1996.
Dude, it's not. It's one of the worst. And the Mountain West might be better, right?
Yep.
It's like, seriously. But Virginia, and that's what they're benefiting from. They're beating teams like Boston College, they're beating teams like Miami, who's just an absolute train wreck that's going to miss the tournament this year after going to the Final Four last year, right?
And the Elite Eight the year before.
I know. Larinaga, he ran out of gas. And so this Virginia team going to Duke, that definitely not looking at that. I might look at the under in that game personally, but we'll see. We'll see what your thoughts are. I'm going to be honest and say I think Duke is not the 8th rated team. Now, I'm not going to fade them necessarily against Virginia, but coming up at NC State and then at North Carolina at home might be a part where I fade them. I'm not buying Duke. I think it's the same thing that you said. I think it's just the ACC isn't that great, and they're taking advantages of beating some really bad teams in the ACC. And Duke is not the number 8th team. I think they're probably the number 15th or 16th team in the nation. So they're going to be a little bit inflated coming up. But we'll see what you already gave us a hint on what you're going to do for Saturday in this game. So we'll get to that in a minute. But my other fade team, I would say, is Dayton. They're not in a great conference. And the Atlantic 10, I thought used to be better. They're not the 25th team in the land. I don't care what anybody says. This is not the top 25 team. I can name a ton of Big 12 teams that are ranked lower than Dayton that would smash them, in my opinion. I watched Dayton play. They're taking advantage of some really bad teams in an overrated conference. I cannot wait to fade Dayton, and it might even start this coming Friday, coming into the games. So, little hint, let's talk about that too. And first, do you have any comments on my Duke and Dayton fades?
Nope, I agree with your reasoning. And I don't need to hear any more discourse on court storming. Should they, shouldn't they? Fine, whatever. Ban it, don't ban it. I don't care. Just leave me alone. But I agree with what you said.
Heck yeah. Well, Dayton does play Loyola on Friday. That's going to be the one I'm keying in on. Ken Palm's got Dayton by 3 or 4 points. I think the wrong team might be favored in this. Now, will it be that? Probably not. It's going to be a standalone big Friday game of a ranked team, or at least they're 25th in Ken Palm. I don't know. I don't really look at the AP poll much. But Loyola is actually a pretty solid team that plays really good defense, and they're much better at home. And believe it or not, their effective field goal is 79th in the land. It's not that bad. And 38th in adjusted defensive efficiency. This will be probably a wrong team favorite type situation. So just know that I'll be keying in, unless Loyola is a favorite of 2 or more, I'll be keying in on fading Dayton. And you might need to do that quickly, because I think the Friday, tonight's number is going to be a lot better than you're going to get tomorrow in that. So any agreement there, Will?
I agree. That will probably end up in my account. It's interesting how they balance these Friday and Saturday cards, where the Friday card is so minuscule. It'll change once the conference tournaments get here and everything's kind of going to be jam-packed, everything being pushed back. But during the regular season, like, man, there's like a dozen, 15 games on a Friday. Then you look at the Saturday card, and it's like a CVS receipt where there's like 200 games. Just I do wish they balanced it a little bit more, where, I don't know, it's just so hard to handicap a card that's that long, that's that big on Saturdays.
It is. It's very hard. And it'd be great if, the kids didn't have school, I guess, during the week, but it's just such a massive card. Yeah, it should be more on Sunday. I agree with you.
Yes.
We need bigger games on Sunday, especially when it's not NFL season anymore. Let's go right to the game then that you picked, or one of them. Virginia is going to be against Duke and at Duke, Cameron Indoor. Ken Palm says the spread is going to be 11. Is this too high for what you're thinking, or what do you like for this game? Total 127.
It is a little rich, but I don't think this Virginia team will travel well. I don't think they'll be able to just sustain any offense. I can't get that Virginia Tech game out of my head from a couple weeks ago. And I just think this team is a fraud. They're, like I mentioned, 8-0 in games decided by 4 points or less, I believe is the statistic. There's so many red flags with their offense, their lack of offense, their free throw line. I think Duke puts a number on them. I do think Duke wins this game by, 13, 15 points. So 11's a little rich. I was hoping for like 9.5, 10, but I'm okay landing here. I like the Dukies.
It's interesting. It's like, I'm scared of Duke blowing them out so bad that it does go over 127 a little bit. Virginia's been locked down on a lot of these unders. Of course, they failed when Boston College had no defense whatsoever last week.
Nope.
But this second away game, I'm thinking Virginia team total under. I could see that. It's going to be a 57, 58 points, something like that. And this could be just a situation where Duke decides to put on 75 points and they're stuck at 55. So you're actually at 130. You lose the total in the game, but you might be fine on the team total under here too. So I lean with you too. I think Duke could definitely. I think this is one of those ones that you're like, just lay the points. Don't look too much into it. Of course, you want to shop for line value. Always do that, but don't let the 10 or 11 scare you. Making sense?
Yep. And I should probably, I started to do this a little more, play a little more team totals. I do it in the NFL. I do it in other sports. I got to start doing that more in college basketball, especially first half team totals, because second half things can get wonky. If teams are trailing, they can chase points and play faster and, free throws and all that stuff. But first half, you can really isolate your handicap. I was looking at the one the other night, Cincinnati, Houston, where Cincinnati's team total for the first half was like 27.5, 28.5 or something. They didn't come close to that number. Sometimes you can really isolate your handicap and just do that first half team total. Another way to find value. That's the thing. Like, there's so many markets now. Like, there's different ways to attack your opinion, your handicap of the game, or say, hey, I like this team, but it's not like, when we were, I don't know, first started betting, whatever, 15, 20 years ago, where it's like, all right, you just have to either lay the points, take the points, or bet the over, or bet the under. There's all different ways to attack this now.
100%, man. I mean, sometimes the team total is a great bet. Unfortunately, the big books, DraftKings, FanDuel in Arizona, that's the one thing I don't get. I don't get team totals from them. Isn't that weird?
That's interesting.
I know they have so many different rules. Like in Connecticut, you have issues, and then we talk a lot about that. But it's like I can't do that, so I have to find offshores or other reasoning to make some of these plays. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge for that. But no, I'm writing down Duke and Virginia team total under for sure to look at. Let's move to Wisconsin, and kind of what I was saying here. I alluded to this. Illinois about a week or two ago was one of my sell high teams, and I still, just because I say 2 weeks ago doesn't mean it's still not coming into fruition here. I think Illinois got lucky a little bit coming back in one of their final games. Are they the 13th best team on Ken Palm? I don't know. I think they're probably in the top 20, but they should have lost that game against, or they did lose that game against Penn State. They choked it away.
Oh, terrible.
They actually should have lost against Maryland too the week before. But something with them is that they've been very hot shooting, but their defense has been bad. They've allowed over 85 points, or at least 85 points, the last 3 games to Penn State, to Iowa. I mean, letting Minnesota score 97 against you. Sure, you're running and everything, but you didn't even cover that spread. You would have thought if Illinois scores 105 points, they're going to cover this spread against Minnesota. No, they couldn't cover the spread. I mean, they've been a killer over team. And that's why this total is going to be massively juiced high. I mean, Ken Palm has this total as 157. I think this could be at 159 with the market deciding that. But Wisconsin needs this game like blood, man. It's they've been bad. They know they're kind of inching more towards people losing faith in them. Bad seed. Do they want a 9 or 8 seed and face UConn the second game of the season? No. Of the tournament, they don't, and God forbid NAT, but they're in my opinion. But Illinois coming off those wins, like I said, Wisconsin's the perfect team to face Illinois because they have offense. They're not that old Badgers team that remember that had defense. Well, Illinois, they're going to kind of play a away team against a Big Ten home team. Big Ten home teams are 55%, 55.18% at home against the spread this year, 117, 95, and 7. So, Big Ten home teams, it's just that home court advantage that's been hitting a lot of these big conferences, right? And I expect a low spread because Illinois is better than Wisconsin. They're ranked higher in Wisconsin. I'm expecting to be -1.5, -2. I feel good about the Badgers shooting 55.8% effective field goal at home. Illinois gives up a lot of points, as we just talked about. Wisconsin will at least have a matchup advantage in the paint. Illinois doesn't defend in the paint like they used to when they had that big guy there. I think Wisconsin gets by, but I'll bet them the first half probably on the money line, and I'll probably bet them full game on the money line. Hopefully both come through, if not at least one. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this was one I almost took too. I had a feeling you take it. I'm totally with you. This is a stop the bleeding game. Absolutely need it. And I do think they get it. So I don't know if you've noticed, but the market's getting sharper where they do price in these spots where, like, I just feel like in years past, a game like, I'm trying to think, Mississippi State, Kentucky the other night. Like, that was a good spot for Mississippi State, but they jacked the line up, and then Kentucky ends up covering again. It's one game, so you can't really take anything from one game sample. But I do feel like the market's getting sharper and taking more into account these spots. I feel like you're paying a tax for these spots where you didn't in past years. Have you found the same?
Yeah, absolutely. You're paying a massive tax in some of these spots. The market is smart enough to know that it's creative handicapping. Creative handicapping.
Duke Wake last week was another one where how is Wake laying like 2.5, 3 points to Duke? Well, it was a good spot for Wake, and like that was built into the number and really taxed.
Just like in Notre Dame ended up a 6 to 6.5 point favorite. All the sites said 8 points. I bet Notre Dame anyway myself. I paid the tax on it, but it was just it's not an average, because if you're a metric handicapper, God bless you, because man, I don't think that works personally anymore. Now I do think it works some, and I think it works during the tournaments, but I don't think it works during the season. And it just shows you that these home courts are expanded. Kansas was getting 8 points against BYU just for being at home. I actually bet BYU, thank God. But it got too high. I was just like, you serious? I have to bet this. And you're just kind of like holding your nose. You're like, oh, BYU showed up on the road. But it's getting ridiculous. But at the same time, it's coming through in most cases, And so you have to look at your creative spots. And I'm learning that more and more as these seasons get longer and longer for these teams. So agreed. Let's move. Okay, go ahead.
I was just saying, I wonder too if the expanded conferences makes travel more difficult, where these teams are going, like Texas Tech is going from Texas to Orlando back to Texas. Like, you don't have, with these expanded conferences, you're going to strange places, you're going longer trips where it's not like everything is condensed. I'm just throwing it out there. I wonder if that has any effect in terms of like making home court advantage more valuable, making playing on the road even more difficult.
1,000%. Nobody's stopping. I think the point that you made, travel is what it is. It's they travel a little bit easier on nice planes these days, but it's still the unfamiliar environment. How often does Wisconsin go to USC?
Right.
How often does Oregon have to go to Purdue? It's going to be so different for what these kids were as freshmen or sophomores. You can see home court advantage being 5 or 6 points in these, and that's what I'm going to be factoring in. And nobody's there to regulate calls. It's just the home team always gets the calls, and it's just the way it is. It's the truth, and we have to handicap that. It's our job to handicap that.
Yep, it'll be interesting too. Teams like Wisconsin, like you mentioned, going to USC. These colder weather teams that go to warm weather cities in the winter, like for basketball. Wisconsin going to USC in the winter, where it's like it's cold in Wisconsin, but then you go to USC and it's nice out. I don't know how much control the coaches have over. Like, there's a little bit of a vacation mentality for these colder city kids when you go to that warm weather. So I wonder if that factors into it. They get a little too comfortable. They're not as focused. We've seen like Hawaii have these massive home court advantages, home field advantages in all these sports, because you go to Hawaii and it's, hey, we're in Hawaii. You take the foot off the gas a little bit too. So that's another aspect of it.
Oh, absolutely. I think the different environment definitely will make them feel like, oh man, I want to go check this out.
Right.
For
go to the beach, see what the girls are wearing, that kind of thing. Yes.
Oh, they're kids. Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. Well, let's go to a game that we both picked here. Tennessee versus Alabama, probably the best game of the weekend. And I'm sure you agree on that. I put a total of 164. I think Bama's going to be
the first half or full game 164.
Probably the first 3 quarters.
Yeah.
I would not bet the under here. I think that it's going to be probably 2.5 to 3 points too, if I'm going to be serious, because of Rick Barnes on the road and all that. I don't know what your thoughts are. I'm going to let you go first. Do you have a play? Is there a reason you picked this game, or just want to talk about it?
I like Bama here. You could say this about a lot of teams, but they are much different at home than on the road. They defend much better at home. They shoot the 3 much better at home. They got a nice win against Ole Miss on Wednesday night, but man, their defense is really bad on the road. It's a little better at home. And I just think this is a decent matchup where they're very vulnerable to like dribble penetration, allowing teams to get to the rim. That's really not Tennessee's game. It's more of like catch and shoot. And what connected against Auburn was obviously incredible. He's a tremendous player. It'd be interesting what kind of NBA player he makes for, but he is fun to watch. He'll be fun to watch in the tournament. But I agree. Rick Barnes on the road, Tennessee on the road, Bama in their environment, in their building, will defend better. They'll shoot threes better. This is a revenge spot. They got buried. I think it was January 20th. It was the day of the division rounds in the playoffs where Tennessee put a number on them. But Bama was came into that game. I think Sears was banged up. A couple of guys were hurt for Bama, so that was not a good spot for Bama. I think Bama bounces back and gets this one here.
Perfect example game of home road splits versus metrics. Metrics scream Volunteers, but seriously, home road splits screams Alabama. It's just so interesting. The total's going to be high. Does it matter? Both teams play fast. I almost think that you might get a better live or second half over. I'm a little worried that both teams could come out a little slow, but you'll get a better number. Remember, live betting has been sometimes a much better angle when it comes to pre-flop stuff. Tennessee is great at home on defense, holding effective field goal down to 40%, but on the road, it's 48.8%. They are definitely getting scored on in the road. So I'm not taking the under, but the Vols 344th in road splits on Hazelmetrics, Alabama 8th in home splits on Hazelmetrics. I'm taking the Tide here myself. Do I want to lay past 3? Probably not. I'm a little worried Tennessee could do a little bit to make this a very close game. I think I would rather take the money line. How about you?
Yeah, I'd probably find like a minus 145, minus 150 money line. You're probably laying minus 110 on the 3 anyway. So, yeah, again, and you mentioned live betting can be a good angle, good avenue where, hey, if Tennessee gets up 5-2, but then all of a sudden you're going to get like minus 125 or minus 130 on a money line. So, yeah, it would be Bama. It would be on the money line. If I had to take the 3 or lay it, I would still lay it, but money line might be the better way to go.
Makes sense to me. All right. Well, we have a couple quick more games. I have Gonzaga, but why don't we do Kansas Baylor first? Let's do your Kansas Baylor first, which I find very interesting. Kansas coming off that big loss to BYU, Baylor coming off a nice road win at TCU. So, what are your thoughts on this?
I like Baylor here. I think they'll be laying a short number. It's interesting. They played a couple of weeks ago, and that was another spot where it was just so inflated based on the home road stuff. I think Kansas got up to like an 8.5 point favorite, if I'm remembering that correctly. And Kansas won the game, but Baylor covered. It was only a 3-point margin. I just think this is a good matchup for Baylor. Again, Kansas is home versus road. They're another one of these teams, really good at home. With BYU the other night being an exception, nowhere near the same team on the road. McCullough can't seem to get healthy. And just from a matchup standpoint, Baylor's going to play zone and force Kansas to shoot. Kansas just doesn't take a lot of threes. They don't make a lot of threes. So turning Kansas into a jump shot team, keeping them away from the rim, which Baylor can struggle with when they don't play zone, I think that favors Baylor. And again, I don't trust this Kansas team. It's not a vintage Kansas team. Going on the road and winning in Waco is not an easy thing to do. So I think Baylor gets it done here.
I agree. I think Baylor takes care of business. Now, McCullough is probably held out to the conference tournament at least. I don't think he's going to play into the conference tournament. There's no reason to put him out there. You sit there and let him heal, and you have bigger fish to fry, right? Makes total sense to me. He's going to be listed as questionable, which might give you a little bit more value on this line, Will.
Yep, it's a good point, and you're right. What's the point of playing conference tournament? And even if he's not 100% conference tournament, maybe just wait for the NCAAs. Now, that's That's a dicey situation where, hey, he hasn't played in a while, and you just throw him into the fire in the NCAAs. But obviously they got bigger picture, and we're betting these games, we're watching these games. But from a standpoint of like what the team's value, it's all about the NCAA tournament. It's all about March and being healthy in a couple of weeks and not beating Baylor in a regular season game or even a Big 12 tournament. And if he's not 100%, he's not going to help you anyway. So the goal, I think, is to get him 100%. So yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if they help him out a little bit longer.
Oh, for sure. Baylor is going to be a great money line parlay piece too. I think they'll be in like the minus 240, minus 250, where you find another dance partner, you're going to get even money, or possibly.
What are you projecting that line to be? What does Ken Palm have it? I don't have it in front of me.
Ken Palm has 5. Five. It's not going to be 5. It's going to be 6 or 6.5. I would think, just at least how Kansas has been on the road, which I still.
And wasn't it 8 in? Wasn't it 8 in Fog? In Fog Allen?
Yeah. I think it was probably 8. I have to look back, but I think that sounds
like
right.
A 15-point adjustment for home court. My goodness, that was not that long ago. It was a couple weeks ago. It's crazy.
February 10th, man. And Baylor played tough. Baylor played them really tough and almost won that game. Baylor, I think, got the rebounding advantage. They're 32-12 offensive and defense. That's 44 rebounds to 32 rebounds. So yeah, it's just Kansas had better players that day, and I think that It's just going to be a situation. Now it's also without McCullough. I don't think McCullough played this game. I definitely like Baylor here, but at least be a money line parlay depending on how high this number gets. But like we both said, watch the market, get the numbers early. You can kind of see which way it's going to go. Let's move on to Gonzaga, baby. Gonzaga is going to be playing a massive game. Now they play tonight. All right. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I took San Francisco tonight. So people listening to this podcast tomorrow is either going to be like, Kiev was wrong or Kiev was right. Right. So either way, I'm probably betting St. Mary's in this spot. I think Gonzaga is an overvalued team. Everyone's going to be like, well, St. Mary's, they already won the conference because they're going to smoke Pepperdine tonight. Right. So they're going to be like, St. Mary's is not going to care. Gonzaga needs it more. That's going to be BS because St. Mary's wants to beat Gonzaga in every freaking possible position they can, every situation they can. They want to show that they're the best team. They took a lot of stuff about the refs when they beat Gonzaga last game. And yeah, the refs were bad that game. But either way, senior night, most likely, I'm going to be on St. Mary's. I don't even know if the spread matters to me unless it's like 7 or 8. I think St. Mary's clears this team. I think Gonzaga is just picking on a lot of small teams in this terrible conference. I will say they really stepped up against Kentucky, but you have to remember Kentucky plays themselves fast into trouble.
Yeah,
there's situations where you're like, you can't even think that this might have been that great of a win because Kentucky just has been so bad on defense and they're just so yin and yang. I'll be on St. Mary's. What are your thoughts?
Yep, it would be St. Mary's or nothing for me. Again, I want to see the number with their style. They play slow. You don't think of them as pulling away from teams, but I would be St. Mary's or nothing for me. And I'm with you on San Francisco on Thursday night. So hopefully we get there. Are you taking the 3.5 or are you taking the money line?
I took 4.
Okay.
I don't trust the money line as much. I think, whenever I take 3.5 or more, I put a sprinkle on it, which was like maybe a 5% or 10% or something on it. So that always benefits me a little bit. And nobody wants to not hit a money line when you're betting the dog. So it's just, it's just part of the way I do things. So, but I
hope San Francisco gets in the tournament. That's a good team. I don't know that they'll get in if they win this game. Obviously, it's a huge step, but that'd be a team that'd be fun in the tournament. I like that team.
I hope in their minds they get in because they're not going to get in even with this win. But in their minds, hopefully they do, unless they roll through the WCC. And to be honest with you, anything San Francisco 10-1, 12-1.
When those up yet or no?
No, not yet. Well, some books might have.
Yeah.
I will be looking at maybe sprinkling a little San Francisco. They're going to be probably on the Gonzaga side of things. So this might tell you a little bit, if you can have 12-1 on them and then they're playing St. Mary's here in the finals, St. Mary's might be a -300 favorite, but that's hedgeable if you're getting 12-1. So
sure. And San Francisco played them tough a week or so ago. That was like a 7.5 point spread, and San Francisco hung within the number. Played well. I like the San Francisco team. I don't know that they'll get in, but I like this team.
Yeah, me too. I think well coached, solid team. Not great, but solid. Yeah, I like this team as well. I've always liked this team. What else we got going on here? I mean, I think I'm going to be fading TCU. I think TCU on the road at BYU, probably a 6 or 7 point spread. I'll probably just lay with BYU. I think BYU's playing some good ball again, and they're just a good home team as well. A little hodgepodge on that one. The big game, Creighton Marquette. We didn't mention that one. Creighton's going to be at home against Marquette. What a fun game that's going to be. Any kind of inclination about what you might do on any of these two?
Might take an over on Creighton Marquette. I could see that being a high scoring game. Creighton, obviously, one of these teams is much different in their building. So fun game. Wouldn't be surprised if we see them again in the Big East tournament play against each other. And who knows, they might run into each other in the Big Dance. So this might be one of like 3 meetings between them and between these two teams between now and the end of March. So that's an interesting game. That one should be fun. I think that's the Fox game. And then Sunday, UConn Seton Hall. It's interesting. Seton Hall on the bubble here. Seton Hall, that coach always does well against Hurley. He's had a habit of playing them well. They beat him early in the season. Seton Hall did in New Jersey. So UConn's going to have revenge on their mind. I'm sure that'll be taxed into the number. So I don't know if I want to get in front of this UConn train, but I think that line will be inflated too, just because, hey, it's revenge. It's UConn. This is a standalone game. This is Sunday, noon Eastern. So that'll be an interesting one in terms of where that line opens.
I agree. I think Seton Hall is going to be playing for their lives. UConn might be coasting a little bit. Probably a tough place to lay it with UConn, even though I might not want to go against them either, though. So, yeah, I'll be watching that one. I would say maybe a Seton Hall team total over is another way you could do it too. But yeah, I'll be watching that game. Yeah. How ugly is this game on Sunday? Ohio State at Michigan, or actually it's Michigan at Ohio State. But either way, what a I mean, in football it'd be
Are they
awesome.
playing football? Yeah, are they playing football or basketball? Football, I might watch. They've done a nice job under this interim coach for Ohio State. He's pushing hard to get this job. They've had some nice upset wins. I don't know that that's going to be enough. And these are two teams. Assuming Ohio State doesn't keep the interim, there's going to be some big time jobs open. Ohio State, Michigan, Louisville. This will be a fun coaching carousel in another 6 weeks, a couple months. I don't know who's going to be up. Like, does Dusty May get a job from FAU? Does Beard get his pick of one of these jobs? Does somebody go down that route saying, hey, whatever happened in the past is in the past, that guy wins? It'll be interesting, who fills these positions in terms of the coaching carousel.
There's a trend that says if you're less than 60% win percentage, late total overs are really hot. Kyle Hunter went over that last week with me, and Ohio State at 16-12 right now are on the brink of it, but Michigan at 8-20. These teams, this could be just a complete offensive game, and you're not seeing a lot of defense. I could see a possible sneaky over in this situation here for sure. So I'll look at the total on that, because right now, at least Haslametrics has the total at 142, which could be low for the way these two teams have been playing on offense lately. I don't think Michigan's completely given up or anything. I've seen some effort from them. They're just inconsistent as heck. So I'll look at a total in that one. Maryland, Indiana is a disgusting game that you might want to look under on. 133 on Haslametrics, but man, Maryland unders have been pretty solid.
Yes, they have. And it was close it got really close against Northwestern. That's why
got it by half point, right?
Yeah, it depends on when you got it, where you got it. I think it landed 129. Did it land 129? I think there was 128 and a half, some 130.
Yeah, I think it landed 128 and a half. So it would probably register as an over, but the truth is, I think any of the guys we know would have not played that number.
Yes, if you got a good number, you should have won really either way. But yeah, Maryland can't shoot threes. They don't take a lot of threes, don't make a lot of them, and they play good defense. So that's an example, though, where the first half under is just so much more comfortable. The first half unders. You don't have to deal with fouls. You don't deal with teams chasing points at the end where things get wonky. You don't have to worry about overtime where these first halves can just be rocking chair unders. Meanwhile, the second half or the full game, even if you win it, you're kind of sweating the whole time.
For sure. I agree on that one, man. First half under we'll look to. All right. Well, man, I mean, we nailed a lot of games down here. It's going to be a fun weekend of college basketball. But hey, man, you've been killing it yourself. Gold Boys Discord, that's where my man is. He's on VSiN weekly. He's on Gil's show on VSiN. He's on Follow the Money sometimes. He's a guest. You also have an amazing Shoulda Bet More podcast yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yep, twice a week. Usually drops Monday and Friday. Had you on recently, right before I think the Super Bowl. Ian Eagle have had pro bettors on. Steve Fezzik. So always a good guest. So check that out wherever you get your podcast. Shoulda Bet More, 3 words. And like you said, VSiN, I'm on all the time. Friday nights, Saturday nights. I got regular spots now. Regular co-hosting duties with Dave Ross and Matt Human. So appreciate you having me on. We always do these home and home. So I think you're due to come on mine pretty soon again.
All right, man. I'll be ready when you're ready. Make sure you guys check out Will. Will, I'll be texting you this weekend.
All right. Sounds good, man. Thanks for having me.